Well, this verse says all of this stuff here, and not only that, but also we'll have a great relationship with our parents. All of that is tied up in this thing called honoring, okay? Learning to honor our parents. Now, some of you guys who maybe got excited a second ago and said, oh, man, this is going to be awesome. I find out a way to make my parents do anything I want. Now you're realizing that it takes honoring them to get there, and you're thinking, just kill me now because I'm never going to have a long life. I can't do this, you know? But listen, you guys, it's not as hard as we think. And, when we learn to do this, you guys, the Bible tells us, here's the crazy thing, that as we honor our parents, I'm willing to bet that your relationship with your parents is going to improve, that they are going to begin to give you more freedom, some of the things you desire. But even if they don't, the great thing is that God says that when we obey Him in this, He's going to bless us. That no matter what happens, it's going to go well with us. And we're going to live a long life on this earth. So there's a great promise that goes along with this, okay? So let's look at this a little bit. How do we honor our parents? And how do we really break this down? Well, the first thing we got to realize is this. Sometimes we think to ourselves, well, I don't really know that I want to honor my parents because I don't like them that much. They make me upset, that type of thing. And so I would honor them if they were nice, but if it's not nice, I'm not going to honor them. Well, the first thing we need to learn about honor is we honor people by their position, based on their position, right? Not necessarily based on our preference, okay? What that means is that God chose whoever your mom and dad is. God chose them to be your parents. And, maybe they're not perfect, awesome, flawed, but God, out of all the people you chose them, and He wants you to honor them because they're your parents. And that's the position that He's put them in. It's kind of like the same thing with a policeman, right? You don't honor a policeman based on whether or not you like his haircut, You don't honor him based on whether or not, he seems like a real nice guy. You honor him based on the authority that he has because of the position that he's been given. And it's the same thing with our parents. You may not like their rules. You may not like the way they act. We're not supposed to honor them because, they are the best dressed, parents on the block. Or have the best dance moves, or lack thereof for many of our parents. But we don't honor because of that. We honor because of the position that God gave them as our parents. So whether you feel like my parents are great or not so great, God still calls us to honor them. That's our responsibility. Okay? And how do we do that? Well, let's just talk about a few, and I'm going to just talk about some simple things. Not super hard, but stuff that will make a big difference in your life. In obeying the scripture if you do it. What about this? How can we honor our parents? What about thinking about the way that we talk to them? You ever think about that? You ever look at how we sometimes talk to our parents? When you introduce your parents try to talk to you, and you answer with one-word answers. You know what I'm saying? You're playing the video game. How'd you have fun? What'd you think? Nothing. Anything else on? No. They try to talk to you, just all absorbed. It's like you don't even make eye contact with them. They're talking to you, just looking out the window like you don't really want to be with them, And you wonder, man, my parents are nice to me, whatever. Well, maybe sometimes we need to start honoring them a little bit more in the way we talk to them. You ever do this, you guys? Sometimes you start speaking to your parents, you stop speaking English, and you start speaking like hyperventilation language. You know what I'm talking about? You get back, you're like, not even English anymore, We get mad, roll our eyes, stomp off our room, slam the door, turn the music up. Listen, I don't think that's what God had in mind when He talked about honoring our parents. See, sometimes maybe we need to reevaluate the way that we talk to them. The way that we treat them when we have conversations, things like that. What about this? Maybe we need to look at another way we honor them is the way we talk about them when they're not around.
True.
Listen, think about this. You guys remember when you were a kid and someone would tell a yo mama joke? You know what I'm talking about? Those were like fighting words. You know what I'm saying? Nobody talks about your mama like that, right? You know what I'm talking about? They have those ones to be like, your mom is so stupid, she's not a quarterback with a refund. Or they say something like, your mom is so greasy, when she sweats, Crisco comes out. They say, your mama's teeth are so yellow when she smiles, traffic slows down. Right?
Ow. That's kind of just me.
Well, that's one of my favorites. Your mama's so bad when God said, let there be light, you have to tell him get out of the way.
I like that one.
You would never put up with that stuff.
I like that one.
Man, people try to talk like that about your mom when you were 6 years old. It was fighting time,
I like that.
We didn't even know Ephesians chapter 6, and we just weren't putting up with it, right? But now we get a little older and we do that stuff. We volunteer, we talk about our parents behind their back. That's so stupid. They don't understand anything. My parents are totally idiots. talk bad about them, do all this stuff. You guys, it's not honoring them, right? You know, we talked a little bit earlier about how sometimes we're drawn to things that are not good for us, and the Bible begins to put us on a path that allows God to bless our lives and for things to go well with us. And this is one of those issues, you guys. Your relationship with your parents was meant to be one of the most formative and most enriching relationships in your life. And some of you, maybe there's a unique story that you have. Your parents have some serious issues that hurt you. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the majority of us, you know, we're in situations, sure, maybe the relationship's not that great right now, but God calls us to honor them and to make it that important of a relationship. And so the Bible instructs us on what we need to do. You know, maybe we need to look at the way we talk to them, the way we talk about them. You know, what about this? What about if we're going to honor our parents, one of the ways we can do that is by obeying them, right? Doing some of the stuff they tell us. You know, some of us are like, you know, our parents, you know, ask you to do something, hey, will you bring out the garbage? And we make them ask you like 10 times, you know. Hey, take out the garbage, oh, I'll get it in a minute. Hey, take out the garbage, oh, I'll get it like 3 days later. Take out the garbage, oh, I'm almost there. And then you know what's so funny? Why don't my parents give me freedom? Why don't they trust me? Well, maybe it's because we haven't earned any trust yet, right? You know, some of you ever have your parents, you know them so well, that it's like, you know that until they reach a certain tone of voice, you don't need to do anything, right? You know, like you're sitting there, you play video games, and your parents like, Jimmy! It's like, hey, aren't you going to respond to that? Nah, not yet, don't worry about it, keep playing, you know? They call again, Jimmy! Oh, aren't you going to go? Your mom's calling you. Oh, we're fine, you know. All of a sudden, Jimmy! Like, keep this time, I got to run out. You know, and now we realize it's important, you know? And we do this stuff, and then we look at their lives, and you know, working out like, hey, why is it taking them? You know, why is it taking them, you know, why is it hard for them to give me freedom to do some of this stuff? Well, maybe it's because we haven't built any trust. You know, what would it be, man, that's what would happen if we just, like, obeyed your parents the first time. Can you imagine how much they would freak out? Your parents are like, hey, you mind taking out the trash? Sure, Mom, let me get it right now.
There you go.
Call me everybody, have an heart attack, you know. You put your parents in the hospital. Think about it, they'd be out of the house for 2 weeks, you get to do whatever you want.
There you go.
I'm kidding, but seriously, what would happen? You know, some of us, we want freedom because here's the thing we got to realize. You know, you don't get your freedom by saying, I'm 14 or 15 years old, give me some freedom. It's kind of like, you know, a bank account. You know, you don't walk up to the bank without putting in any money and be like, hey, I want to make a withdrawal, give me $100. It doesn't work like that, right? You start to deposit some stuff in the account. Deposit some stuff in the account. And after a while, when you go to make withdrawals, there's money there, right? And it's the same thing with your parents. You know, if you're obedient to them in different ways, you start to build up trust in their account. And then when you go and say, hey, give me some freedom, there's some trust built up there, and they say, hey, you know what, we're going to trust you with a little freedom. This is how it works. This is what the Bible tells us to honor them. Not only is God going to bless you, but it begins to make through a good relationship. And in the end, a lot of you guys, you end up getting things that you desire after all anyway, because you begin honoring your parents. You know, and sometimes we talk about obedience, you say, well, I'll do what my parents say, but you do it with a bad attitude. You know, that's not going to help. Take off the garbage. You know, get all mad. Have it taken out all the garbage. I'll take you out too. You know, walk away, right? It's not going to help. You grab our parents and be like, oh man, that's awesome, thank you, you know. We obey them, maybe the first time with a good attitude. You do that stuff, we're going to start to honor our parents. God will bless us, start to build up trust in their account. You know, what if we just got really crazy? I mean, that would freak our parents out a little bit if we obeyed them, right? But what if we just really freak our parents out, okay? Like, not only did we obey them, but we actually went the extra mile. You know, like did even more than they asked us. Okay? Can you imagine what would happen to our parents? They ask you to clean the kitchen, you jump up, clean the kitchen, you know, you're getting done, you're like, hey Mom, just wanted you to know I cleaned the kitchen and, you know, I figured it might be helpful, so I just cleaned the rest of the house too. Imagine what your parents would do, right? Okay, imagine this. Imagine if you just went home and then after this weekend, without even asking, you just cleaned your room. I mean, you know, your parents are watching. Jimmy, what are you doing? Just cleaning my room, Mom. Jimmy, look, I know we've never talked about drugs, but maybe now I'll get you some. They feel so jacked up, you know? They get all flustered and after me, like, oh, really? What is it under for? It's called carpet, Mom. You just haven't seen it, you know? I mean, your parents would freak out. You know, if we started doing that, man, we just started maybe going the extra mile a little bit, you know? Doing some stuff that they ask you to do, and we just go, you know, one step above that. talking about that allows us to begin to enter into a relationship with our parents like we desire, like they desire, and one that God will love. You know, I'll tell you something else, man. We're just getting over the top right now. You guys ready to go over the top? Okay. Not only, what if we say you can be obedient to your parents, it's important to obey them. You know, it's important to do, maybe even going an extra mile.
What time is it?
But what